Throne and Liberty is less than a week away, and a lot of people actually don't know what this game has to offer. So rather than speculate based off of rumor, in this video I'm going to be breaking it down for you because we actually know a lot about the game already. Now, I'm not going to start this video by boring you with the obvious details about it being an open world MMO that looks gorgeous, developed by NCSoft, running on Unreal Engine 4. Instead, we're going to get right into the details. First, you can expect Throne and Liberty to be an endgame focused MMO with a relatively fast leveling experience. After removing all autoplay functions, they've sped up the leveling speed to max level to where casual players can hit cap somewhere around 50 to 60 hours or more, committed players realistically hitting it around the 3-day mark. You'll progress to the endgame by completing your main story quest line along with participating in world events and completing contracts. We're going to get into these individually, but just know that the leveling process here is a bit more random and dynamic due to the nature of randomly timed world events being a big part of your experience gain. Your performance in these events will determine how much experience you get. There are also no side quests in Throne and Liberty. You do have blue quests, however, which are specifically for your codex completion. Think of this as Adventure Tome in Lost Ark or just general achievement / map completion like content in other games. Aside from this, leveling and progressing to the end game in a group or a guild is also significantly faster, which brings us to the next section. Projected endgame in your day-to-day experience. A defining characteristic of Throne is that this is a very guild-oriented, party-based game. The core of this game is clearly designed around group play. The fact that you can't even buy mana pots unless you're in a guild, unless they patch that of course, should be a great indicator of it. Leveling speed, gear progression, dungeons, PvP, everything will just be better and more efficient if you're in a group. Guilds play a huge role in Throne and can be argued that the game actually revolves around it. Joining a guild is extremely important as content and progression will be tied to it to a certain degree. By being in one, you'll have access to guild bosses, which are very significant, pots, buffs, open world guild events, and of course, gear upgrades. One final note on the guilds, all members will have all of their performance stats shown, meaning people will be able to see exactly how much guild contribution you have and even your total kills and deaths. Guild contribution, by the way, being the metric that defines the guild rankings on the server. This is gained through completing guild quests, participating in guild events, and donations. So what are we doing on a day-to-day basis? Well, you'll essentially be doing one of the following: daily contracts, codex completion, dungeons, or world events. Starting with the contracts, these are the dailies of Throne and Liberty. These will usually take you roughly around 1 to 2 hours, depending on you and your group efficiency. These are very straightforward, objective-based missions that will have you venture out and kill X amount of mobs, for example. You are limited to how many you can do per day, and you can unlock more as you level up. Codex completion is next, and it's broken down into 3 different parts: adventure, exploration, and collection. Codex is essentially your achievements mission book that will give you one-time rewards for completing quests and objectives. Dungeons will also be a big part of Throne. The 6-man instance dungeons are supposedly pretty juiced, but currently we don't have that much info on them outside of everything that was showcased recently. The open world dungeon, however, is a different beast. This place will have different floors with a bunch of mobs and bosses filling it. You'll be rewarded with additional drop rate, experience, and gold. These dungeons are open 24/7, and you cannot enter during in-game evening hours. If you're already in the dungeon, however, you can stay there through the night. You will not be able to stay in this dungeon permanently though, because you will consume what's called abyss points when you're inside. These points are accumulated by doing activities outside the open world dungeon and does have a cap of 10k. This system works very similar to Agris in Black Desert. Lastly, we have world events, which make up a lot of the content in Throne and Liberty. When opening the map, you'll see a daily schedule that consists of all the events on the day, very similar to Lost Ark's world events. These events take place every hour and are a mixture between PvE, PvP, and GVG content. These modes are dynamic, meaning some events can be PvP one time and PvE the next. Usually the PvP and PvE events are fairly evenly split, and these events do give out some significant rewards. I can tell you that in the end game, you could expect at least anywhere from 2 to 6 events going on every hour. These events are performance-based, which means if you show up and you hard carry, you're going to be rewarded for it. And those rewards also can extend to your guild as well. These events are locked behind server progression, however, so your server will have to collectively progress in order to unlock more events for that server. And yes, there are cross-server competitions. Node Wars, Sieges, and Tax Delivery are 3 special events that also fall under this category. Node Wars, also referred to as Boonstone or Riftstone events, happen every 6 to 12 hours or so and is an open world GVG event. Without going into too much detail, the objective here is to essentially grab a flag and hold a point for roughly half an hour or so, competing against other guilds in the process. Winning the node will give your guild a variety of buffs, which include experience rates, drop rates, and even sheet stats. Siege is exactly what you'd assume it to be. Sieges take place every 2 weeks, and it's essentially the castle occupying guild versus every other guild. Guilds that occupy the castle will collect rewards and taxes, which even include Lucent, the premium currency. By occupying the castle, you'll also be granted the ability to escort taxes in another weekly to bi-weekly event called Tax Delivery. Tax Delivery is another event where the current castle-owning guild attempts to escort taxes to its castle via a giant golem. The castle-owning guild will assign someone to drive the golem while defending it against the entire server that will contest it in efforts to steal the tax. Next, let's talk about the gearing process, something that I feel like a lot of people actually don't really know about. First off, gear can be obtained by a rare drop via bosses, but is mainly obtained from crafting. With that, there are 3 elements to the gearing. First is the enhancement level, which is your standard +1, +2. This process is the simplest. You feed it a specific mat, in this case called a growth stone, and you do it until it hits 100%. There's no chance of failure. Every upgrade is guaranteed. Second is the grade of gear. Blue is superior to green, for example. You can feed your current gear into a new piece of higher grade gear, allowing you to transfer your experience. Third are the traits that come along with your gear. This is where the RNG is. When you craft a piece of gear, you'll get an RNG trait and you'll unlock more traits depending on the piece of gear. You will not experience any downgrading or failure when you're actually enhancing your gear. Instead, you're going to continue to upgrade that gear as much as you can with mats while you grind. And while you're doing that, you're going to also be continuing to farm base pieces to try and find the best trait combination that you can use so that you could feed into your main gear or replace your main gear with. With that understanding, now I think it's time to talk about the monetization and trading. Currently in the KR version, there is a cash shop currency called Lucent that is available to purchase with real money. There's also a leveling growth pack and a very modest pre-order pack, but considering these seem to be one-time things, it doesn't really matter too much. On top of that, there's also a monthly battle pass. Battle pass details are still not yet official, but based off of everything I've seen, which includes leaks, the pass definitely does help with progression speed, but not by an insane amount. The biggest question mark by far is the auction house, which is exclusively traded via premium currency. Players can obtain this premium currency by selling tradable items on the auction house. Loot that's obtained from the open world bosses, for example, will be tradable. Players will be able to sell these items on the auction house and receive Lucent. At the end of the day, this is a Korean MMO, an NCSoft MMO at that. I don't think anyone was expecting this game to be free to play. We were all expecting it to be pay to win. The question was, how pay to win was it going to be? I think people were hoping that it won't be overly predatory. I think the big question here is how much Lucent will a free to play player be able to realistically farm? If the auction house ends up being almost impossible to access for a free to play player, then this game is pretty much dead on arrival in the West unless they change it. If players can farm enough Lucent, then Lucent is essentially just gold and the game is allowing you to purchase it just like every other Korean MMO like Lost Ark. However, with Throne, there is a particularly larger emphasis on PvP, which makes it a lot more sensitive towards pay-to-win mechanics than a PvE-focused game. My honest thoughts on this is that the game's future lies in the balance of this auction house, at least for the West. The only upside to this system is that free-to-play players could technically purchase anything in the cash shop, since they can farm premium currency in the game. We're gonna have to just wait and see how big the gaps are or what items are even tradable. The way I see it, the best case scenario for this game is that it stays at Lost Ark levels of pay to win and is able to sustain a player base. Worst case is that it's mobile levels of pay to win and dies rather quickly. For me, this game has a lot of potential because the general structure and content of the game is there. Everything will depend on how bad the pay to win system is, but to be fair to them, the game has already become a less pay to win since the beta. I mean, contracts literally had a premium currency version that was removed. Most of you guys may not know the significance in that, but if you play this game, you'll understand that that's a massive W. But like I said, we'll just have to play the game and see. Regardless, I'm going to be deep diving and no-lifing this game come launch time to find out. So definitely come join me on Twitch because I'm going to be live streaming it and I'm going to be leading an alliance of English speakers to try and take the castle and beat the Koreans at their own game. We've got about 200 people or so in our guild and more in our community. So if you are looking for an active, more positive community that's excited to try Throne out, be sure to join our Discord. Otherwise, hang out with me on Twitch, and I'll see you in the next video.